Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show, all about movies.
You're listening to the Jan Price Show, and today my guests are co-directors, Deanne Foley and Latonia Hartery, and we're going to be talking about this brand new movie, which I just absolutely loved, called Hopeless Romantic. Welcome to the show, Deanne and Latonia.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. This is such a fun, I mean, the way this was done is really interesting. So I have a lot of questions, but so our audience knows about what this film is about. Latonia, why don't you tell the audience what Hopeless Romantic is all about?
Yeah, well, Hopeless Romantic, I mean, essentially in terms of a synopsis, it's basically about a woman, Anna, who runs into her ex, Eric, at a wedding, and she's forced to confront their painful split up. And she may realize that her feelings for him haven't changed. And through the course of the evening, she meets 6 other women who are dealing with their own stories of love and loss, and their stories and her experiences kind of informs how she's going to have this conversation with Eric about her feelings, and how that interaction between them goes down, is something that you'll obviously have to tune in and watch the movie to experience. But essentially a film about relationships and their emotions and their risks and their payoffs too.
So this film is a total of, it's 6 stories, and it was directed by 6 different women. So you're 2 out of the 6 who directed a segment, I'm assuming, of the film. So I want to talk about that, because that's something I haven't heard of before, where you have, first of all, I love the fact it's directed by all women, number 1. So let's just say that's a rarity right there. And then 6 female directors is amazing. And so how did the idea come about, and who wrote it? Who wrote this? And were there different writers who wrote each different segment of the film? I have a lot of questions there. And I'll direct that to Deanne.
Oh, okay. I was waiting for Latonia to answer. Sorry. So there was, honestly, on paper, it really shouldn't work to have that many voices trying to tell a story. But there were about 8 writers, and some of the directors wrote and directed, say, their segment, and other directors had other people write the segment. Like, for example, I directed the spine of the film, like a lot of Anna at the wedding, and also I directed 2 flashback stories, which involved, one was called Meet You in the Deep End, so it was about this woman who's a doctor who's just gone through a divorce, and she signs up for adult swimming lessons, and then she ends up meeting her ex at the swimming pool. And then I also directed another segment about the little girl who has a crush on this boy, and other things ensue. And that was actually written by Ian McLeod. So, it's kind of interesting in terms of, I think the genesis of this project came from Latonia, who actually wanted to raise the profile of female directors in Atlantic Canada. And so she kind of put out a call to various writers who could submit a potential story to be part of the movie. Her working with 2 other producers, Bill Niven and Jay Doyle, they selected so many stories, and then I think we all kind of got together and started not only just writing our stories, but how could these stories connect? So we kind of got together in a room and kind of brainstormed, almost like a writer's room in a way, of coming together with hey, how can we tell what could connect these stories? And eventually we landed on the story of Anna.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. So, Latonia, which ones did you direct, and did you write any of them?
Well, I was producing I directed a segment, but due to the production, demands of everything and the juggling of the different stories and stuff like that, that was basically, I think, the combination that I could do well. So Emily Bridger actually was the writer who wrote my segment of the film, and my segment of the film was about the newly PhD minted character Lauren and her best friend Kevin.
Okay, and so did you all so Deanne, you wrote some of your segments.
Correct. Yeah, I helped contribute to the actual wedding story, shall we say, of like Anna and her fun friend, played by Catherine McClellan. Kind of navigating her way through the wedding. Like having to give the speech and not wanting to give the speech to her niece at the wedding. Here she's lost her husband. She runs into her ex who is Eric. So she's, not only has her husband recently died, now she's like confronting this man who she's had, I would say, romantic feelings for. And so it's kind of interesting. Like she's kind of like trying to, speak to him. He's kind of like, he's kind of like a cat and mouse. Like he doesn't really want to talk to her. She's feeling conflicted. She ends up talking to other women and hearing about their own trials and tribulations of love, and some are uplifting, some are a little bit more, shall we say, dramatic in its tone. But all of them are complicated, like life. Like there's no such thing as a relationship that doesn't have its, a bumpy path at times. So it's kind of interesting to kind of hear all these women's experiences of various ages, talking about their relationships. And some of them are with men, and another one is of, a lesbian story. So there's a wide range of story, and I would say diverse stories, in the film, which is, really interesting. And from, her journey, literally at a wedding in real time, she kind of comes to the realization of how she really feels about, this guy Eric at the wedding.
And it's a perfect setting for this, because, when you're going to a wedding and you're single, it brings up, for a lot of women, it brings up a lot of issues.
Yeah, it's painful, right? Nobody wants to be the single person at the wedding. And you see, this couple who are madly in love. And, it's kind of funny. You have all these women who are kind of like, oh, my God, I'd rather, be anywhere than here. As much as I'm happy for the couple, I'm also kind of licking my own wounds. And I think we've all kind of, nobody wants to be, the single person at the dinner table,
Exactly. Exactly. So I think that was the idea that each one of they're so well done. I mean, it's seamless, and each segment of the film is, as I said, is so well done. And how did you choose? How did you all choose? I mean, Latonia, you were co-producing this, so you were very involved in lots of things. But how did the different directors choose which segment that they wanted to direct? Latonia, I'll ask you that question.
Yeah, it sort of evolved organically because if you're doing an anthology too, we knew that it would be segmented. And of course, the challenges of anthology sometimes is, how do you make it cohesive and have the themes and all of that relate? So that's kind of why we chose, the avenue of having this anthology have a spine, which Deanne skillfully directed. So that story of Anna is the actual spine. And then it was easy to insert flashbacks of the individual women that Anna met. And every single one of the directors who wrote a short film about a romantic story that they had could then sort of be inserted and tied to this spine. And like Deanne said at the beginning, it sounds like it shouldn't work, but once we got together and worked, consistently at the script, we did it remotely at first. And then when we got into Halifax all together as a group, that's when we did the last bit of refining a few weeks before we went to camera. And just eventually in the end, it came together. And as Deanne said, a lot of diversity in there. And Anna really is that key that moves everything forward, as is Deanne's directing skill. Some women who participated in the feature. So just to list the directors, it is Deanne and I, but also Stephanie Clattenburg, Martine Blue, Ruth Lawrence, and Megan Wenberg. And we all had different levels of experience. I had never, I directed a lot of shorts and documentaries, but not a feature film. And Deanne was the most experienced. She's directed, I think, 5 features now, including this one. So with her kind of skillfully leading that pack and in terms of the spine and us joining in, it just seemed to work out in the end. And that's the feedback we often get, even though it's technically an anthology on paper, it might not feel as much like that as some anthologies, which are really sort of, cut into parts.
Yeah, it's as I said, it's fascinating, and the behind the scenes story is as fascinating, if not more, than the actual movie. And the movie's wonderful, so I will say that. But I just love the fact that again, coming together as a group. Did any of you know each other prior? I mean, how did you said you sent out what did you send out, a press release? What did you send out to attract these directors?
Yeah, we just because we all are from Atlantic Canada, and that's sort of a smaller population, so everybody knows everybody. So we got in touch with different women to see what their schedules were and if they would be interested in participating in the romantic comedy. Well, at first we didn't really define it as a romantic comedy, but we knew we wanted to do something about relationships and who would be interested in that. And then that's when we started to get replies from people who had scripts or wanted to create something to become a part of the film. So that's basically how that happened, essentially. And we all knew each other because Atlantic Canada, especially Newfoundland, where we are right now, I mean, the film community is quite small here, so it's easy to reach out and see who would be interested in kind of being part of this experiment. And if we were going to do a romantic comedy, kind of move away from this sort of stereotypical fairy tale style ending, and create something a little less conventional and traditional in terms of structure. And
myself and Latonia had also lived in Halifax, so but I'm now living in St. John's in Newfoundland. So even the community in Halifax and Nova Scotia, the film community is also small. While both these communities are thriving, people tend to know each other. And so while I might not have worked closely with, say, Stephanie Clattenburg or even Megan Weinberg before, I certainly knew their name.
Interesting. I just had somebody on my show a couple of weeks ago, Robert Atatui, who did the film Stand, and he filmed it in Halifax.
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah. Halifax is fantastic. Everyone always says about Halifax some of the great film crews of the world, right? Because everybody's very caring and skilled and very invested in the arts and how Nova Scotia is represented. So I'm not surprised that he would be filming there and probably enjoyed it as well.
It was an interesting story because he's from Canada, although he lives in LA. But one of the stars of the film is a young actor who is from Halifax that had worked on I can't remember the name of the TV show, but anyhow, and he had gone back to Halifax, and somehow they ended up connecting, but he had no idea that this young actor was from Halifax. So it is a very thriving film community. There's lots of I actually studied acting in Toronto. So
cool.
A long time ago before I went to New York and studied there. But
great.
I lived in Toronto for a while, so I have a fondness for Canada. This is again. So how did each of you? Did you all work together, or did you all just work individually on your own sections of the film?
Well, I think we started. It was a long time coming together. The writing took a while, for sure. So we started individually on our own first, for sort of like individual short films about, or shorter segments of a film about potential, relationship stories. And then when we had those written, we realized we needed a spine to connect them all. And that's when the spine writers, essentially the story of Anna that connects everything together, was largely led by Megan and Deanne. So it was just organic. When you say Deanne, it just sort of organically happens. Like, it took time, but with each passing step, it just started to interweave at its own pace.
Yeah, and absolutely. But in terms of production, it was really the directors were working individually, right? So we started in production, we began with the wedding. That was the first thing that was shot. And so the only kind of crossover in terms of, having two directors on set at the same time was really myself and Megan, because she also directed all the individual scenes between Anna and Eric, which was played by Lynda Boyd and Hugh Thompson. And so there was some crossover in terms of, Anna's arc and Hugh. So we were both directing those actors. So that was really the only opportunity where I felt there was some sort of crossover. And of course, I ended up directing all of the leads in all of the segments. So I made sure that I always sit down with all of my cast and have conversations. But I also really wanted all of the leads in the various segments to make sure speak with their directors before and have long conversations about their characters and their arcs and all that kind of stuff before they kind of came to me. So they would have a real sense of who their characters were because I would be directing them in those wedding scenes.
Fascinating. Just the whole process is absolutely fascinating. Well, you've got a great cast of women in this film.
Yeah.
And a great cast. And Lynda Boyd, I mean, as you said, she's the spine. She's the glue that holds it all together. And she's just absolutely wonderful. And she looks so familiar. I mean, everybody looks very familiar to me that I've seen them in many other things. And they're just all wonderful. So talk a little bit about the casting, because you had to cast each one, I mean, each segment differently too, I'm sure, or was each director in charge of their own casting process?
Yeah, each director was in charge of their own casting. It's kind of remarkable. I mean, we have over 50 actors in this film, and Lynda is based in Vancouver, and I had worked with her previously on this TV show called Republic of Doyle that was shot here in Newfoundland. And so, having Lynda play the role of Anna was kind of like a dream cast, I guess, a choice, and also reality. So I think, and then, each person got to cast their own segment. Is that correct, Latonia? That's how I remember it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And Erin Hennessy in Halifax helped us with the casting process as well. So we did have at least, thankfully, one casting director that helped us manage this massive amount of cast.
She was amazing.
Exactly. And that was a great experience, in and of itself, because I think it's a great day when that many actors can have a role, and Lynda flew in, but and I think maybe one or two other actors, but the vast majority of actors for the film did come from Halifax. And it was a pleasure to be able to work with so many talented people in Nova Scotia that way. And because the talent pool is deep there, each of the directors really had a choice. We were spoiled for choice because there's so much talent in Nova Scotia.
That nice. That's a nice issue to have. So how long did it take you? You mentioned Hugh Thompson before I move on. Hugh Thompson, he's just adorable too. And the chemistry between, Lynda Boyd and his character, Eric, and Anna's character is just wonderful. So, had they known each other prior to filming, or did this chemistry just come together on the screen? Yeah,
they have never met before. I think they were aware of each other, but it's my understanding is that they have never met, and they just really connected.
You can see that. Yeah, it's really. I love the whole film. I mean, there wasn't. Sometimes I see a lot of movies, obviously, and just drift off, or you go, where are they going with this one? Or whatever, and this one was just, I just loved it. I loved each segment. I was looking forward to the next one to see what you were going to do next. And then, I love the little girl and her father. That was, let's talk a little bit about that, because that was so funny.
I had the pleasure of directing that one. So it stars young Joy, who is played by this little girl, Lexi McLeod, and that was her debut. She had never been on screen before, and I just thought she did a really lovely job. The dad was played by Matthew Lumley, and written by Ian McLeod, who's just such a funny guy. And, of course, what I love about that short is just how kids can misinterpret things and the disconnect between parent and child. And I have two kids myself, and not to give too much away, but it involves around kids and misunderstanding what a blowjob is, and a parent's absolute horror thinking that his young daughter is somehow now talking about blowjobs, and trying to have that was it the birds and the bees kind of conversation with your kid, and how awkward, and how he's just not prepared, and he's just failing, you know what I mean? Like just trying to find the words to kind of, help her understand. And, one of my favorite lines is like, oh, why does your mother have to be at work? And it's just so funny to me because I think my husband has felt that way at times. We have a young daughter. And so, life has thrown him this curveball and you just see him trying to deal with it. And it was definitely, we shot the whole segment in one day. Like it was crazy.
Oh, wow.
And so, but those little kids were amazing. I also, her friend was so great as well. Samara plays her best friend who gives her the bad advice. And I just thought, I just love directing those scenes. Who plays Joy's friend. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that. It's just that there is a lot of joy in that. There really was. So now that you've done this, have all of you bonded of all of the directors and bonded? Have you thought about doing another project together?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like we were saying before, we did have some knowledge of each other beforehand, as well. And the experience on set was, it was just so good and something so interesting in terms of how it all came together in the end. And, once the machine was running, it was, as a producer, I really got the pleasure of seeing the different approaches, the women had to directing and, what everybody's needs were. And that was really special for me. And I continue to be in touch with everybody. And then Deanne and I are actually working on a writing project together here now as well. And the other women who worked on the film, they've all gone on to do really special things. They, have features coming out, or in the case of Ruth Lawrence, her film Little Orphans just won a major prize at Whistler, the Borso Prize for Best Canadian Film. Yeah, so we all continue to be in touch, and I certainly hope I get to work with everybody again in the future. And I think that's a pretty good chance, actually. As Deanne was saying, things are thriving here, so I think that opportunity is going to present itself.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. How long did it take to film this and put it all together?
Well, we filmed, I guess, in terms of days filming, it was probably 17 or 18 days, and everybody had 2 days to direct the shorts. And I think, Deanne, it was about 5 days, right, for you and Megan to sort of finish off the spine. But in terms of editing, it took a little bit longer, because we had to put all those parts together and make sure we captured the essence of the story in the editing suite. And we wanted to make sure that every director had an obvious say in how their film was edited. So I think off and on, probably we were editing 3 or 4 months, not every day, but just allowing time for that feedback and to make sure everybody's voice, was heard and things like that. So... But in terms of getting it off the ground, the writing and stuff like that took a little bit longer, So I don't know, it's probably 2 or 3 years, I guess, from beginning to end. Yeah.
It's not, it usually does take a while to get it. I just think the end product is marvelous and so wonderful. And it's the perfect film for every hopeless romantic in the month of February to watch this film and beyond. Yeah, we're all looking for something that's uplifting. I know every time I go to watch a movie and I see it and it's dark and everything, I go, oh, no, I can't watch this right now. I have to have something light.
Yeah.
I think that's the way I've been feeling all year. How about you? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's a good pandemic movie.
Yes, it is. It definitely is. Where can people see it? Where can people find Hopeless Romantic?
Well, it'll be coming out. It's already out in Canada. In the States, United States, it'll be out tomorrow. And you can see it on iTunes, Apple TV, or Vimeo on demand.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you both. I wish you much success with this wonderful movie. You have a great enjoy the rest of your day. You're welcome.
Thank you, Jan. It was great to talk to you.
You too, both of you. Thank you. You can listen to The Jan Price Show whenever and wherever at thejanpriceshow.com, where all of my shows are archived, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast on the iHeart Podcast Network, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast. You can also go to Facebook and like our Facebook page and see what's coming up on the show, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Jan Price Show. Thank you for listening.
Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show, all about movies.